So I suppose, first of all, tell me, how did you get to be where you are right now? You know, having just come off of taking a weekend course.
Yeah. So joining me in the woods after running a weekend introductory bushcraft course. So, well, I suppose it starts with growing up as a kid outside, really. So my parents were always kind of outdoorsy. Not in any professional sense, but our leisure activity of choice was walking. So kind of working class Sheffield couple raising kids, just going out to the Peak District hiking was a good start. But in particular bushcraft then, my dad was a fisherman, so he'd go and fish on rivers. We'd camp out quite often overnight. And as a little kid, that was ace. You know, you all kind of pile into the tent together at the end of the night and camp out. But as I got older, sort of maybe around 10, the little niche that I'd carved out for myself in this little sort of 3-man tent with 6 of us piled in there was looking smaller and smaller. And so I was kind of getting fed up with camping, really, like climbing into this little tent with sort of my dad and a couple of cousins and just being cramped. And that coincided with Ray Mears coming on TV, so I was just the perfect age to receive that television programme, and it opened a door. And I'd seen this early episode of him making a just wood debris shelter like the ones over there, and I thought, that's brilliant, I'll do that. Like, sod the tent, I'll just go outside and sleep in one of these. So that was it. So I, like, next time we went fishing, I built a little den and slept in it. It probably wasn't very good, but it kept me warm enough with my sleeping bag and all that. And like, that was it. That was me on the trajectory then. So from that, obviously kept watching the TV programmes that Mears was putting out, and then asked for his books for Christmas. You know, went through the book. I remember distinctly his like sort of figurehead book, Bushcraft, just going cover to cover and doing as much as possible in the UK in that book, and then getting another different book from a different person, you know, and going through that one cover to cover. And that was my childhood. So from however old I was, like 10, 11, right the way through to college, that's just what I did. And then started working, so obviously took different paths, went to college, took photography at college, art and design, that sort of thing. So I've always been quite creative.
How come you chose art and design and not necessarily something that's sort of an outdoor class? Was it that was even offered?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of didn't really think that, I'd not at that point realised that outdoor pursuits was a career path. Like, it
as
just
opposed
had
to art and design.
Yeah.
Most people go, IT, I could do maths, no, art and design.
Yeah. Well, that was it. I mean, I was at school, so the lessons we got taught at school, you know, of that narrow window of potential careers, art was the only thing I was especially passionate about and good at. So I was good at science and good at maths and English and all those things, but it didn't really strike a chord. Art was something, it's just that creative side of it. So like the design and technology element was good as well. So yeah, as I'm kind of just looking at college prospectuses, I was like, well, what was I good at GCSE, and what's on offer here? What do I like? And so I did at A level, I did art and design, I did photography, and I did philosophy. And yeah, that was kind of where I was heading. I sort of thought, I could maybe be a graphic designer or something, but I was always constantly going on trips and hiking trips and that sort of thing in the background. So I finished college, kind of got, I had a college job at a pizza place, so I became a duty manager at the pizza place leaving college. It was kind of a little bit like, just didn't really know what to do. I knew that art wasn't a viable career path. And as much as I enjoyed the creative element of it, I suppose the bit I didn't like about the course was the fact that you got given a project and you had to fulfill an obligation of coursework. And I sort of looked at the career path and thought, well, that is what that job is. Like, you get given whatever it is, a design spec, and you've got to fulfill it. I thought, that's not what I want to do. I just want to be able to kind of find my own way. So I was sort of not lost, but I was just a bit like a loose end as to what to do. and I happened to fall into a job at an outdoor activity centre in the Peak District with the Youth Hostel Association. So that was great because that gave me an opportunity to move out of home. So they provide you with accommodation to live in, and you've got access to all these. It's just a great like young person's job. So you're working in the kitchens, you're working on the front desk, you're kind of doing housekeeping, and then I was exposed to these outdoor instructors that were doing rock climbing and canoeing as a career, and I suddenly thought, oh, you can like work outside and get paid. So I went down that initial kind of early steps of going, well, I'll just be an outdoor instructor then, that's it. And then almost immediately realised that that broad spectrum of outdoor pursuits, the only bit that I was really passionate about was the nature element. So bushcraft as it is, but physically engaging with natural materials.
And what age is this now when you're figuring this
That's
out?
probably about 20, I guess. Yeah. So like sort of getting into it, you know, adulthood and looking after myself and all that. And I'm starting to think seriously about, all right, I'm 20 now, you know, soon to be 21. I'm out on my own. I'm, you know, not getting pocket money from parents or anything anymore. So I'm like, what am I actually doing with myself? Because I'd got all this like potential promise from school, the sort of like high GCSE qualifications, the high A levels. I'm supposed to be fulfilling my potential, and I was just kind of like dossing around at this fun and yeah, not to like knock that job. It's ace, but yeah, I sort of felt like I wasn't really going anywhere. And then by just happenstance, I'm working at this activity centre that does rock climbing, canoeing, orienteering, all those things. The schools that were coming to that centre were were requesting of the centre more forest school type stuff, so bushcraft, nature engagement, immersion type stuff. And none of the staff there at that point had done any of that stuff really. So they were getting asked about it, and I was passionate about it. I'd been doing it my entire life, so I sort of said, well, if you want, I'll put you something together. Just, you know, it's just one of those like in the staff rooms, just stuck my hand up and went for it. And the management there at Ace, so they're really cool about giving people opportunities.
And at that time, had you done any kind of formal training in bushcraft or anything like that?
So it's pure hobbyist. It was just my thing that I did in my private time. Yeah. I'd got some experience of teaching, so I used to teach karate. So when I was kind of working at a pizza place, the apart from going camping and stuff, the other hobby I had was karate. So I got to a black belt and started teaching that. But it was a kind of a volunteer job. I got my training free if I taught a certain number of like kids lessons sort of thing. So that was great, and again learnt a lot and all that sort of thing, and it gave me an insight into what it is to teach, and what I found out about myself was that ability to sort of read how somebody else is engaging and being able to then direct that engagement to where they need to be, I suppose. And so I sort of had in mind that, like, you know, just feedback from that sort of stuff was that I was relatively good at coaching people. So I had an instinct that I'd be good at it anyway. And then, yeah, like the opportunity to teach bushcraft came up at the activity centre, so I thought, brill. They let me run with it, so I went on a couple of courses with a guy called Dave Watson, who's a legend. Like, yeah, well, you know him, don't you? Yeah, so yeah, he was great. I went on a couple of courses with him, with a mind to, you know, that sort of like arrogant, I suppose. Like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I just need the paperwork. That's, you know, that it wasn't quite like that. But you could, if you were building a story around how it was, that would be the character's arc. Was at that point as it wasn't quite like that. But that was the, you know, a means to an end as far as I could see. Like, if I got that certificate, I could then deliver the sessions at the activity centre. Of course, I went on it and just like had my mind blown. I was like, whoa, all right. So yeah, there's like, not only is there bushcraft stuff I don't know, which of course, but also there's means of engaging people outside which I'd not even considered.
Something about learning from someone who is decades of experience within a certain area that you instantly realise how little you know.
Yeah.
and how kind of humbling that is.
Mm.
You know, I think so many people. I found that when I graduated university, 3 years doing one thing, and I thought, well, yeah, I know most things. I'm fine. I can do it now. And then so quickly realised how little I knew and
Yeah.
how much I really had to learn. And
Yeah.
that's why now I try. It's trying never to feel that and have that arrogance, because anyone who is, most skill sets, anyone who's actually any good, never says that they're good, because they know how much they still have to learn.
Yeah.
As soon as you delve into it more, you realise how much experience you do need.
Yeah, always. Yeah, and that was like, so that's like the spike of the Dunning-Kruger curve for me. Like right at that point, meeting Dave Watson, I was like, oh no, I'll start back again, shall I? And then they never quite got that high again. But at the same point, like the other graph would be my enthusiasm for the career was like then just skyrocketed. I was like, this is what I want to do. So yeah, learned an absolute ton from Dave. Went back to the centre and was like, cool, yeah, we can deliver, shelter building session, a fire lighting session, and a general kind of like nature immersion session to kids. So I built those sessions for the activity centre, ran them a few times myself just to make sure they were running well. And then my kind of involvement was to run those sessions enough that I could then train the activity staff to deliver them. Because at that time, I'm still on the domestic team basically. I'm sort of duty manager / receptionist type of person. So I spent sort of a year on and off, like training the new set of staff that came in to deliver these sessions, and then keeping on with their kind of CPD to make sure that they feed back to me and I'd re-deliver it and all that sort of thing. Did that for a while. It got picked up by the Youth Hostel Association's national office, so they were really keen to get it into other hostels, because again they were kind of getting pressure from schools to deliver that sort of thing. But also there's just like that cultural upswell at that point of like forest school, kind of the Scandinavian thing was coming in. It's sort of in vogue, but also it's quite easy to deliver. Like you just need a bit of nature, and it doesn't have to be a firelighting session or a shelter building session. It's just that kind of interact physically with the natural world sort of stuff. So I spent probably 2 years of time, maybe doing that, 2 or 3 years of time, working my full-time job at the activity centre, and then every once in a while going out to another hostel and training their staff to deliver things and that sort of thing. And then 2014 rolls around. I've been doing it for a while. I thought, I feel like I could deliver introductory bushcraft sessions to a level that other schools are doing that, because that was the level to me. I didn't want to just set up and start doing it if I couldn't at least feel like I was reaching the bar. Like other schools set a pretty good bar, pretty high bar, and I didn't want to be under delivering on that and kind of selling them short. So I thought I want to do justice to the subject. I've got to get above that, and that's where I felt I was at that point.
And with you mentioned about like saying with other schools and where they were at this time, did you do much? Was it because you were going to events or taking part of other courses, or just generally meeting other schools? How did you gauge that kind of level of experience and where it needed to be?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't attend that many courses. If I'm honest, I've not really been on that many courses from other schools. I did a good amount with Dave. Went to the Bushcraft show and kind of got a feel for the community there, like you do.
Which one's that?
So the Bushcraft show is like big capital letters, like that's the one of the year. It's usually May, and they host it in different places. So I think for a while it's been in South Derbyshire, but I don't know if they've moved venues recently. Just to accommodate a bigger crowd, that sort of thing. So I went to a few of those, and you sort of get a feel for it there. Like, okay, cool. There are like the people at the apex that are doing really good stuff. So if I wanted to name drop it, it'd be like Woodlaw, Frontier Bushcraft, Woodland Ways, like top tier stuff. And so I sort of felt like I could at least strike the same level as their introductory courses. I wasn't at the point where I could do their nuanced, detailed, hyper-specific courses like deer tanning, for example. But the introductory stuff, I thought, I can nail that, and I've coached enough people now that I reckon I can get that up to standard. So that's when I set up Howl. So initially set up Howl in 2013, 2014, and started delivering introductory bushcraft days. So the initial struggle a lot of people have is finding somewhere to do it. So the little woodland that I had access to through like a friend of a friend of a friend sort of thing in Sheffield was good for sort of day courses, but you don't really want to sleep in there overnight.
What was that?
It's just a bit too close to roads and things, so nothing like specific. It's just, not very, when it goes dark and you can suddenly see headlights passing by and that sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah, I ran day courses for a bit, and then met a guy called Tom who runs Green Man Learning just outside Wakefield.
Mhm.
So it's like, again, sound dude, and he's been doing it years longer than I have. When he was specifically delivering to kids, and we just got along straight away. So I met the guy just through a mutual friend, and then hit it off and realised that he'd got a private woodland that he was using. He only really used it in the day, so he didn't really run overnight stuff, and he was delivering to kids. So we realised there's not that much crossover between what we were doing, and way outside all of that anyway, super supportive of what I was kind of wanting to do. So within like a day of meeting him, he was like, yeah, use my woods, like get yourself off the ground. So I owe everything to Tom. He was amazing. So I ran Howl
for free as well? Or does that...
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was sort of that like gentleman's understanding that if he needed anything, I'd help him out, and yeah. So I couldn't believe my luck, really. Yeah, so I ran Howl out of there for about 18 months. Spent that time sort of gaining momentum for myself, putting more courses on, really kind of being reflective. So every time I ran a course, I'd spend a full day nitpicking through how that course went, and being hypercritical to like a nerdy level, do you know, like just picking apart the course and going, how did that person respond to this, that, the other, all that sort of thing.
Did you do any kind of evaluation from the customers or from people who were taking part?
Yeah, so I realised pretty quickly that people have got a level of self-awareness, that's one really good indicator of the feedback they would give me. So the experience they feel like they've had, and then there's my sort of behind the veil of going, what experience they could have had, maybe, or to what degree did I impact that experience. So if somebody says to me that they've had a brilliant weekend and then all they talk about is the woodland and the trees and the birds and all that sort of thing, that's great. They've had a great weekend. I'm not complaining at all. But all I've done is allow them to sleep outside overnight. So there was a bit of that sort of thing of going, all right, that's great. So clearly setting and scene and all that is important to people, and giving people space to just be outside. So a lot of people come on the courses from a urban situation and they just want a break. And that was actually a really interesting kind of early learning thing for me. Was I set myself up thinking I'm delivering courses, so people are going to come, they're going to tick these bullet points and go home with these skill sets, and almost immediately realised that actually at least half the people that come are not that concerned with that, and they want an experience. So rather than me thinking, well, this is the jumping off point, they'll come on my course and then they can have adventures, I realised really early that this was the adventure for a lot of people. They're coming from, the city, they just have, normal modern lives like everybody. They've got this weekend free of their month or half year or whatever it is. So this is the experience they want to get. So that changed the way I deliver courses quite significantly. And as well, you get a bit of that imposter syndrome when you're first setting up, because I'd not been through another school. I just set myself up and then started. And I was like, like I said, I've not been on a lot of other people's courses, so I didn't actually know what was being delivered and how and the way it was delivered. So again, I've got like these people that I like massively look up to, and I thought, well, I've got to fill their shoes at least. So I'd absolutely cram the courses with like bullet point after bullet point of all these things I'd try and teach, and almost immediately realised, right, this is far too much. Like, you're overcompensating. So slow down a bit, break it apart, and that's then in my reflection process. I was like, okay, what do I actually do outside? What are the things that I do day after day after day when I'm outside that are actually valuable to people? So things like fire lighting, yeah, we could do bow drill, hand drill, fire plough, we can fire pistons, we can, all that sort of stuff, and it's all valuable and it's got its place. But 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, I'll light a fire with a fire steel and a natural tinder. So that is the thing that people need to focus on then. And yeah, if they've got a particular interest, sure, we can crack out the bow drill set or the hand drill set and give them that extra tuition. But the focus of the course is that 80% of the time when I'm using a fire steel and natural materials.
So would you say, with that example where it's kind of, it sounds like it's the skills that are useful for most things.
Mm-hmm.
Like the other day when we were doing the knots, you mentioned you teach people 5 knots, or it's kind of because they're the knots that can cover lots of different things. Is that something that you do across the board?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's that looking at, again, so looking at my outdoor life and going, all right, what is that 80% of the time I spend doing? And the 20% of the time is, it's also, that's where the kind of creativity happens, I suppose. So I'm almost inclined not to instruct people too much in that sense, because once you've got the sort of fundamental skill set, it's then personal. Like it's your personal journey. Like, oh yeah, I can build that shelter, and that's like the de facto shelter, but tonight it's raining in a different direction, or I forgot my sleeping bag and it needs to be a little bit more insulative.
I don't know what you're talking about. I forgot my sleeping bag.
Yeah.
Remembered everything else other than the stuff that I really needed.
We've got beer, that's all you need. Yeah. But yeah, and at that point then, that is creativity. That's where people get to just express themselves, whether that's out of necessity or just an urge to be creative. So again, I'm inclined not to instruct that stuff, because that's where people can have their own adventures and find their own way. So yeah, in everything, whether that's shelters, I give people a means to construct a strong structure, an instruction on how. So like, let's go specific then. So shelters, how the shape of the shelter impacts how it will shed rain, trap warmth, cut off the wind, all those sorts of things. I'll give lessons on how that works and what shapes may be a bit more efficient in terms of materials and stuff. But then outside of that, like, go for it. If you want to put a drawbridge door in it, why not? Like, there's some brambles that'll work as the cord, have at it. So that's that kind of 80-20 thing, in the sense of how I build courses. And that does translate to everything, I suppose.
And why do you think that is? Is that something that you necessarily in your maybe not personal life, but personal bushcraft life? Is that a kind of ethos that you go by? That you kind of, do you almost limit yourself or think, well, I know a good amount of that, but actually I want to learn how to break the rules. So for myself, it might be, sometimes it's knowing that piece of tech can do that, but then that's enough for me, because now I want to learn how to break how the tech does that and how I can manipulate it to do something crazy with it, rather than learning exactly how cameras, exactly how the intricacies of how it works.
Yeah, and that's like a thing, isn't it? Like, you get.
I see it as like the example of, sometimes it might be understanding, like I think sometimes with like tree identification and foraging, sometimes it's having not just a photographic memory, an encyclopedic memory of every single species, the Latin name for it. How important and worthy is that, compared to maybe knowing that hazel can be used for X amount of tools, jobs, resources, whatever. Where is best spent your time? And
yeah, sure.
That's like, for me, it's more about why I'm interested in meeting yourself and learning more, is because it's more about how to learn and manipulate a small amount of knowledge or resources, as opposed to understanding, being able to walk out and know exactly what everything is. Because I know that, and it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd rather spend like 2,000 hours and be an expert on one little bit of it, or
Yeah.
you know,
So-
tool creating or something like that. You know.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack in that, isn't there? Like, I heard a really good thing the other day. So that phrase, like, a jack of all trades is master of none.
Mm-hmm.
So that apparently the full historic phrase is a jack
Says
of...
the filmmaker who's doing everything himself.
Yeah, well, there you go, right? So the true saying, the full saying, is a jack of all trades is master of none, but that's better than being a master of one. And the ethos is that actually to be a fully functional being, you know, and actuated in all these different avenues, it is generally better to have a good working knowledge of a lot of things than a really specific, narrow knowledge of just the one thing.
Absolutely.
That sounds, that's in one way insightful. It's also quite basic. Like, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah,
you've
it's
got the
common
classic
sense.
sort of.
It's like it's like with bushcraft, like you say. If someone, it makes me think of the Ray Mears programs, whereas some of them where there were stories, and it's like you know, just there's certain knowledge where you may be an expert in shelter building, but it doesn't mean you. Or again, I think tree identification is one. You know, you can name every single species of plant and tree and whatever, but that doesn't mean you can build a shelter or make a fire or do all that. It's just like, well, I'd rather know how to do each thing than just one. It's same with filmmaking. It's kind of, especially when we were learning, it's a case of you've got to try to do everything.
Mhm.
You may quickly realise either you don't like it or you're not good at it or whatever. Like for myself, I did realise, you know, I'm a fucking only child, big head maybe, that I do like working and kind of being able to have a go at everything.
Yeah.
And being, you know, and doing it all. There's certain areas that I'm interested in, but also by because, for example, for myself it's cinematography, but by having a go at editing and having a go at acting and having a go at producing, not only does it give you the thing that you like, it gives you a view of it from a different angle. It means then, with filmmaking, you know, being a director is a perfect example of, but if the director's had a go at everything else, he's then a better director, or she's a better director, because they know how to deal with all those areas and they know what those people expect and need and different things. And I suppose it's the same with bushcraft.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to characterise bushcraft, I suppose, is that it's not a specific skill set in itself. So it's not like a laser view of oak trees and a deep dive into oak trees. It might be that you love oak trees and that's just your entire world is learning about those, and that's great. But bushcraft is kind of more of a working knowledge of the natural environment that you're in, and yeah, like that. I suppose that is where that ethos sort of sits. So whilst a little bit of knowledge can be dangerous, you've got to kind of push past that barrier to get to a point where, yes, you do know enough about shelter building, you do know enough about firelighting, and that's born out of experience. So you'll only know you know enough when, you know, you're camping at -12 in Glen Affric and your mate's toes are getting cold, and if you don't make those feather sticks properly there and then, you ain't getting a fire and he's losing a toe to frostbite, you know, like those sorts of things. So yeah, that's kind of born out of experience. And then once you get to that kind of, I don't know, it feels very organic. So the way I've done it, because I suppose maybe because I'm self-taught and I've not had somebody directing my learning every step of the way, it's been that I've been, you know, fully fascinated with shelters up to a point where, you know, not to say it gets boring, but it's like, yeah, I sort of feel like if whatever my biological needs are, I can build a shelter to meet that. Cool, let's move on a little bit. And I suppose it is natural boredom, you know, like I've looked at shelters for ages now. It's like, let's do something else, and then you bounce to something else, and maybe you then look at firelighting and you go, oh, actually this bit of firelighting embellishes that bit of shelter building I was doing, and you get these kind of cross paths that all kind of weave together. And that then builds up a good body of experience, a good body of knowledge. You have to do the research in order to back it up. So it's all well and good thinking, like, you know, that shelter worked great for me tonight, but is it just the happenstance that it's this shelter in this bit of woodland on this night that it worked well? Is there anything that I can back that up with, you know, in history and other people's writing? Tony Howl. And so that is that kind of groundswell. And I have enjoyed my sort of journey into it because it's felt organic, it's felt natural. I've had mentors and things along the way that have really kind of that's the other thing I suppose to say is that, yeah, if there is a particular thing that you're studying and you can find somebody that knows a lot about it, your learning curve suddenly there's a massive jump in it, and that's great. And that's, I think, historically how humans have learned. So we're not like the lone man on his island dealing with it on his own, you know, like knife in one hand and spear in the other. We are a communal species, so we've always learned off each other. Yeah. So having an interest, seeking out somebody that knows a hell of a lot about it and learning from them, you then jump up the curve. And so that's been really valuable to me, and I suppose that's
as well as teaching others. I suppose that
well,
you learn by teaching as well.
We're having that conversation this weekend actually. Like, but you know, somebody had said that. So they were a teacher, one of the people this weekend, and they said they'd learned not only a huge amount about bushcraft, but that sounds massively big-headed. That they'd learned a lot about bushcraft.
Not only did they learn every single thing they ever needed to know
I
about
taught
bushcraft,
them everything,
and about life and how to generally just be a better person.
I fulfilled them as a human being. So they'd said they'd clearly learned some stuff about bushcraft. There we go. We'll be English and go low bar.
Yeah.
But they'd learned some stuff about the way we delivered the workshops, felt like they could go back to school now and be a better teacher, and that like properly, you know, gets you in the chest. That but my response to that was like, of course that's reciprocal. So it's the way I kind of view passing on knowledge is it's not kind of top down. So I don't look at it and like go, right, you know, I'm passing this stuff down the way. It's more like I don't have a metaphor for it, but it's almost like I don't know, what does this? But it feels
like a root system, that you're just one of the bits on the root, like a microbiotic root system where you're just, you know, you're all part of the same. You know, that you often find out that a lot of you have in a group like this group that you taught this weekend have a lot of the same things that you can then fall back on, and areas where it can help because they're a teacher, so they kind of, the way they learn and the way they pick it up is can fuel and be a catalyst for yourself and for them.
That's it. That's exactly it, and it's really immediate. So, and that's why I think like reflective practice is good, because I'm sort of delivering something, I'm immediately seeing how they're taking that information on board, and invariably they'll do it slightly differently to the way I've told them to. Mm-hmm. So like feather sticks was a good example this afternoon, where we deliver the instruction, we then let the students do it, and we're obviously there to watch, make sure they're safe, but also just see how they're getting on, coach them a little bit. But then somebody will do something that I've never considered before. I'm like, that's interesting. And it's just like a mental log in the back of my head. They've all gone home now, so I'll crack the feather sticks and I'll be like, does that work? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it does. Like, all right, I'll maybe do it this way now. Or no, it doesn't. But because it doesn't, that's you can use it more knowledge to layer in. Yeah. And so yeah, it's all about that. So as much as, you know, I am a bushcraft instructor, it's way more about the instructor than it is about the bushcraft at that point. In terms of the job and the career, it's more about people and getting them from where they are to where they either need to be or want to be, and it's usually somewhere in between. They've got expectations, so there's like all the kind of nitty gritty of my work is managing their expectations, getting them to where they, I suppose, truly want to be, whether that's pulling their expectations one way, bringing their needs up a little bit, or whatever that is. That's all part of the dynamics of the work. But I wouldn't have that any other way. Like, that is the fun for me. Then is helping to kind of guide people, and as much as then I allow that to guide me. So if I deliver a session in a really grumpy mood one day, and I'm like, yeah, that feels horrible. I don't want to do that again. So then it's that thing of going, cool, right, well, I need to go into these things with a positive attitude, otherwise it feels like that. And yeah, in the last few years, it's been amazing. Like, yeah, just being able to see, having people come back time and again to do different things. Or there's people on our canoe trips that have come on the same canoe trip again and again, and that's huge to me. Like, you've already paid for this trip, why are you doing it again? And it's just the fact that they appreciate that every trip's different. So like, I could look at it like that and go, well, yeah, although it's on paper the same trip, they're all different, but also it's the kind of camaraderie, and it's the fact that we're clearly giving them something that has more value to them than just that one experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, while we're chatting, and while I'm doing this, where were we? So you've started Howl. When was that? What year was that? Sorry.
So between 2013 and 2014.
And was that, you just did that by yourself?
Yeah. So been teaching at the activity centre, and I thought it was time I sort of jumped out on my own. So I set myself up a website on my Apple Mac, and I forget how I registered the original one, but yeah, built a website myself and just started delivering courses.
Did you have any kind of challenges, or were there any things that you're like, oh god, like big learning experience from that first year maybe of starting the new business?
On every level. Yeah. Everything from like trying to figure out how to fill out a tax form to realising that I was kind of over cramming the courses and they weren't fun. It was just monotonous, me trying to plough information into people. So everything happened that first year. And yeah, I suppose I've always, I say it is a bit of kind of imposter syndrome, I suppose, but having set myself up, having not been through another school, I sort of feeling like I didn't want to let the side down, really. Like, bushcraft was a sort of emerging field, and people were doing some really good hard work to make it a worthwhile topic, and I was hyper conscious that there's undoubtedly people out there that aren't doing it justice, and whether that's just kind of misplaced, people clearly love it, so it's probably a misplaced emphasis on you as an instructor, what the goal is, and it's always people, so it's never the topic, it's always getting people where they need to be. So I didn't want to go down that path, basically. I didn't want to let the side down. So I'm still like that. I'm still kind of hypercritical of how I'm delivering stuff. I genuinely want to be as good as the best people as I see it in the field. And so yeah, that first year was kind of a huge balancing act to like not drive myself insane because things weren't perfect. And then also realising that, like, of course things aren't perfect. Like, that's the whole point of nature, is that it's the imperfections that make things beautiful. And yeah, balancing out like that.
Yeah. Just realised this isn't on. Turn this one on.
Yeah,
Did you want another drink? I think I might have one more. I don't know.
I will have one more, but not just at this minute. Yeah.
So, were there anything that, now that you've been through it, are there any things that are there any kind of tips that you would give anyone in your similar position?
Oh, crikey.
I'm about half a bottle left. I thought I had more. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, are there any things tips that you would give to someone who was in your shoes? Say the age of about 20, where you said you were, working at an activity centre, you realised that you were really interested in this field,
Yeah.
but you just didn't know where to go and didn't know, maybe were a bit scared about setting something up that was just yours.
Yeah. What advice would I give? I suppose in hindsight, I was really fortunate that what I wanted a bushcraft career to be is what it is. And it might have been that what I thought a bushcraft instructor was off the mark. So I might have thought that it was 90% bushcraft and living outside and camping by a campfire and just having adventures, and you bring people along. That might have been my outlook, and that is misguided, because the work, and the majority of the work, is all the other stuff. So us sitting here now by this campfire, this is wonderful. This is how I spend my leisure time, but it is leisure time. This is not how I spend every day of my bushcraft career. Most of it is me quietly washing pots at 11:30 at night after my clients are in bed and stuff like that. So there is work to it, and it happened to be that that just lined up naturally with what I thought it would be. So yeah, if somebody's thinking of taking a path into being a bushcraft instructor, volunteer or take on an apprenticeship would be my advice. That's not what I did, and I, if I was to go back to my 20-year-old self, I'd probably just say, yeah, steer the course, you're on the right track. But who am I to like preach to other people? But if you're asking me to give advice to other people, I would say try and get some experience as to what it is.
And in a way, you did. You were passionate in the area. You said you did it from a young age, but you then got a job at an activity centre where they kind of gave you the avenue, and then obviously you did go on some courses.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
As opposed to someone who goes from I like doing this and it's fun, but they've had no training other than literally just themselves having a go, which obviously can get you a fair distance.
Yeah.
And then starting up a company. That is. I suppose you need to at least understand if you are knowledgeable in that area or not, by seeing what others can offer, and what maybe you can learn.
Yeah, that's fair, and yeah, you're right. Like hanging out with the instructors at the activity centre, I saw how they had a job, which was the activity centre, and then after work they all went rock climbing and actually had their fun. So that was an insight to that. The other thing that's just made me realise is take a business class, because I would say after a couple of beers I'm a really good outdoorsman. I am not a business manager. In the first few years, it was like manic stress, like trying to fill out tax returns, manage income flow, just all that side of it, the whole thing. So yeah, if you're just starting out, that's a really good time to go on an evening class and get some business advice and stuff like that, so that when you actually come to do them tax returns, you already know what you're doing.
I definitely can second that, because that was something that in my university's degree we learned how to make films to a pretty good level. I understood not as good a level as I thought at the time, because I was just takes so many years to learn. But what I didn't understand, and that's what took me, if I could speak to myself as a so I graduated in 2010 as a 21-year-old. If I could go back to that age, it would be, you need to start that company right now, and be, these are the things you need to be doing right now. Don't wait until you think you're confident enough to do it. Start it right now, because as well as getting those experience of how to do the stuff that obviously a lot of the time, especially with entrepreneurs, this is not the thing you're passionate about. Not passionate with accounts or taxes or weirdly, I make videos that are marketing videos, but marketing myself, it's not something that I am as interested in. It's about the creation of it rather than thinking about marketing strategies and doing all that kind of research. But it's needed. It's what you need
Yeah.
to do, and it's I suppose at the moment it's getting so popular for the people at the age that of university age, or kind of within their teens to early 20s.
Mhm.
Things like going onto YouTube and entrepreneurial things are getting a lot more popular, but I think that's something that is still quite. It seems that it's quite a rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah,
That person's getting paid just to play games and react to someone else, and yeah, there are a tiny proportion of people, but even then,
Yeah.
they've probably got editors working for them.
Yeah.
They have probably got someone doing the taxes for them because they've earned the money to be able to afford someone to do
An
taxes for them.
accountant. Yeah. And what you're seeing is the product, and what you're not seeing is all the stuff that makes
Exactly.
it
You're
up,
not seeing the 40 emails that go out that are just admin of just them organising
Slogging
stuff.
through
And
work.
that might be organising, setting up for them to do this fun, creative, natural moment that just kind of happens.
Yeah.
But actually, it still takes a lot of time and thought and effort.
And off the back of that as well, actually, something else I've realised relatively recently, I suppose, if I've been doing this for sort of close to 10 years in one way or another, is as much as I'm capable of doing it all myself to a level, I have my strengths, and actually then, is it worthwhile? So one way to look at it is goes like, cool, you could be a self-made person, you could do it all yourself, and you've got all the hats, and and that's one way to do it. And largely that's how I've been so far. But that's not how I operate now. So now I have teammates. I've got Max, Robin, Andy, who I deliver Howl with, and we've got overlapping strengths, but they've also got their specific strengths, and leaning on those people for those things makes the job not only easier and less stressy, but more enjoyable. Because then, like, there's nothing better than me just sitting back and watching Max, who I've kind of helped develop as an outdoor instructor, do something that he's just naturally talented at, and just like, cool, there he is doing his thing. And that might be then, if you're, if whatever industry you wanted to get into, so if you're talking to me about getting into the bushcraft industry, if you're a really good outdoor teacher, but you're terrible at social media and marketing and stuff, have you got any friends or people who that's what they want to do? Like, they want to be photographer, kind of documentarian, in social media advocate. Do your interests align, and can you make that work as a company as opposed to a single operation?
That's it.
Like, because I'm sort of vaguely shy, antisocial as a person. So I put on my instructor outfit, and I am instructor JD, and and that's it. But it's like doing drama at school. It's a role that I fulfill. If you catch me in a social setting, I'm usually the quiet one, sat in a corner, just kind of chatting to one or two people and being a bit timid.
Yeah.
And so if I forget where I was going with that.
I'm really timid, and
I've just driven myself into a self-wallowing hole. I can't remember where I was going.
I'm really timid, and I like sitting in the corner, and I just sit by myself and stare at the wall.
That's it, right?
Yeah,
Cut
and
the
cry.
cameras off.
Yeah.
I think I was sort
Quick
of
side
saying.
note: this pigeon stew is horrible.
Yes, I told you it was terrible. You should have let me eat the whole thing. Yeah. Where was I going with that?
I don't know, but now that's started flushing, we've got to be quite quick. So
I should go.
let's end. No one wants to hear me chewing, so I'll wait until I've stopped chewing. Well, that's really, really great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh yeah, no.
Obviously we've got this is totally natural light that we've got here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful full
lovely
moon about
strong
6 feet
moon
away
that we've
from
got
us.
coming in. But thank you for having us and letting us film. And I suppose if people are interested in finding out more or taking part in a course, where do they go?
Yeah, so you can go to howlbushcraft.com, which is kind of the hub for everything, or you find us on social media at Howl Bushcraft. that's it. Just type Howl Bushcraft into anything, you'll find us usually.
Excellent.
Cool.
And this is at the start of the channel for myself, which at the moment, pretty sure if anyone's watching this, it's going to be called The Great Alternative.
Cool.
So this is at the start, but obviously there will definitely be more videos with yourself. So the links will be somewhere on the screen. So go watch any of the other tutorials that we've done and the main documentary. If
Cool.
this isn't in the main documentary, I don't know yet.
Who knows?
But yeah.
You
All right
can go
then.
anywhere. All right, yeah,
Thanks very much.
man. No worries.
Cheers, Jamie.
No worries. Cheers.